I started noticing all of my dogs losing their hair, just looking terrible. A dog that's on a very heavy, starchy kibble really cannot handle any fat fed from the table. All disease begins in the gut. And so, if we start there and if we begin the healing journey there and we teach clients how to feed correctly, there is a process to getting to the right food. The second most common presentation that people would bring their pets in for in the middle of the night was,
did you know that the superfoods you're adding to your dog's bowl, like the bone broth or the eggs, that could actually be making their inflammation or allergies worse? Most people are taught that healthy is healthy, but in the world of food energetics, the wrong food, healthy food, can actually be what's fueling the fire. Let me say that again. The food that you're feeding that you think is healthy actually may be the wrong healthy food that could be fueling the fire. Listen, I'm sitting down with a top tier vet to talk about why there's no such thing as a perfect diet and how to identify the specific foods that are actually triggering your dog's health struggles. Dr. Natalie Lenore Blackman is a holistic veterinarian with over 2 decades plus of animal care. She has provided services to thousands of patients and informed pet parents on the wellness of their furry family members. And she is here to share some of that information with us today, which I am super grateful. I want to welcome Dr. Natalie to the Lucretia Church platform. Welcome, Dr. Natalie. Thank you for being here with us. Could you please tell us a little bit more about who you are and the work that you do?
well, first of all, Lucretia, I would like to say when I left my traditional veterinary medicine journey and went into holistic veterinary medicine, I thought I would always get to drink hot tea like this and sit down with my clients and have really wonderful conversations and walk them through healing. It's been very different than that. We're very busy at our office and I never get to sit down and have a cup of tea. So it was pretty interesting that I'm getting to do it now. I originally started out in emergency veterinary medicine and did that for about 8 years, and then went into day practice for just a year or two and saw the need for really getting to the root cause of disease because pets that were coming in during the day were just coming in for symptom control. And they did this all year long, like a cycle throughout their lives. And it was very disappointing to me. And so after that, I had been introduced to Chinese medicine when I was in vet school. And I kind of went back into that field and got all my certifications: acupuncture, chiropractic, food therapy, herbal therapy. And I've been doing that and loving it for the last 10 to 12 years. And here lately, I've realized that we really have a need for getting this type of information out online. So people that aren't able to come into my clinic will be able to have the same sort of information that I'm giving my clients every day.
Wow. Well, you know what? First of all, if I can speak for those that may be watching, thank you so much for being so generous because not a lot of doctors, veterinarians, or people with the information that you have would be so kind and be so generous to come on and share the information. A lot of people are gatekeepers, but I thank you for not being that type of person, that you really do care about the health and the well-being, hence the name of your actual practice. You really want to make sure that the pet is well taken care of and that that pet is healthy. And not only the pet being healthy, but that the pet parent is informed. And so you have compiled everything, your knowledge, I won't say everything, but a lot of your knowledge into several courses that you have. But tonight we're talking about one in particular. And I think it's important that you are sharing this, and I'm grateful because we do have AI and we do have information right at our fingertips that we can go and we can put in the chat box, put our question, and then get an answer that may or may not be as accurate as it could be or should be, but we can do that. But you are giving us this information from the 20 plus years of working in this particular field. And so you have put this information into a course. Tonight, you're going to give us a little bit of what we can look forward to in your course. And so, again, I want to thank you so much. Your course is called Feeding Made Easy, a simple step-by-step feeding guidance for dogs and cats, where people can learn about food, energetics, portions, timings, feeding raw versus cooked or kibble. Tell us why you chose to make this particular course.
I would say in my past years in my clinic, I have noticed a lot of clients coming in with a lot of confusion, misinformation. They're trying to address their pet's diet. They're trying to do something to increase longevity and health in their pet. And sometimes they end up doing more harm than good. And there's a lot of people that are online that are giving advice that maybe have only had experience working with their pet or maybe one or two other pets. And yet they're this loud voice on the internet. And so I really wanted to get some trusted, truthful, evidence-based medicine type information out there. And so we say evidence-based medicine happens in our practice, or the proof is in the pudding. And so I really wanted to get truthful information online available to clients so that they could understand how to feed their pets correctly or how to transition diets based on what we call the Chinese food therapy or food energetics.
Food energetics. Now, your course is called Feeding Made Easy. This is simple step-by-step feeding guidance for dogs and cats. In your course, they're going to learn about food energetics, portions, timing, feeding raw versus cooked or kibble. And then there's a lot of other things that you teach. Now, you said that the Chinese food, did you say therapy?
Yes. Chinese food therapy is when we are using food like medicine. Just as we say, let food be thy medicine, we
Yes.
can use food like medicine. And food actually has energy. That's where the food energetics comes from. So foods can be warming. They can increase chi. They can do what we call stoking the fire. They can heat a pet up, or they can be very cooling and they can cool the pet down. They can help us get rid of inflammation, douse what we call the fire. So foods can have actions in the body, and that's what this course teaches.
So I understand that food is an integral part of a pet's health, right? And so, how do we know what to feed? How do we know what's warming, what's cooling? How does a pet owner know that?
Well, so within the course, I give a chart, which is the food energetics chart, and it has each food listed and whether it's a warming food by nature, whether it's cooling by nature, or whether it's neutral. And then we also have a questionnaire for them to fill out for their pet based on its constitution. So you want to understand or know, right? Is your pet need warming foods or does it need cooling foods? Does it need neutral foods? We're trying to teach pet owners to see their pets differently so that they know how to feed them correctly.
That is really good. When they see their pet differently, then they'll know how to feed them correctly. So you're offering information, and not only information, but true transformation once they've taken in this information and applied it the way that they feed their animal, then they will see the transformation.
Absolutely. That's exactly what we want to see. We don't want people to believe that there is a one size fits all diet for pets. There just isn't. So every pet is different, every pet is unique, and they need to be fed accordingly. And so the majority of the consensus right now online, I'm not going to say everyone, but the majority of the consensus is raw is the best, but that isn't actually correct. Raw is only ideal for certain constitutions, certain breeds that are in that constitution, a certain age range. And so there's not just one diet for every single pet. Some pets do better with cooked food. There's actually times when pets do better with kibble, especially if they live in a damp environment or live maybe in the South. And so we can help clients understand that their pet has different needs and they don't just need to feed what everybody online is telling them to feed.
Now, you are a holistic veterinarian with 20 plus years of veterinary care. And so I'm pretty sure that you have seen thousands of patients over the years that have been fed incorrectly, or maybe if they had fed based upon what the information that you have, a lot of their ailments and things like that probably would be non-existent.
Absolutely. As we've talked about before, I would say 99% of issues are preventable. And
Mm,
I leave that 1% related to the trauma incidences in the world. You can't stop the hit by car or falling off a retaining wall or off of a deck or something like that. But
right.
we really can prevent a lot of diseases, a lot of illnesses by working at the level of the gut, because as Hippocrates once said, all disease begins in the gut. And so if we start there and if we begin the healing journey there and we teach clients how to feed correctly, there is a process to getting to the right food. And when they do this, then they're going to have a healthier pet. It's going to thrive. It's going to live longer. It's going to have an excellent quality of life. And as we say at our office, we want that pet to age gracefully.
A lot of people, and I'll just put it out there, a lot of people want to go the healthier route, right? So that's why they're in the store and they're standing in the food aisle and they're seeing all these bags and boxes and cans, and some of them are even labeled healthy, but not everything that's labeled healthy actually is healthy. What would you consider healthy?
That would depend on the pet. So there, each one is an individual patient and each one has its own constitution. And so it really would depend on whether that pet needs kibble, whether it would do better on home cooked, freeze dried, or raw. And then we would take into account their constitution, what type of proteins would they thrive on. And so when they're in the store, I actually do have a section in my food course where I do talk about reading labels and understanding how to find a better kibble. Our goal always in the holistic side of veterinary medicine is less starches. And so we really want to get away from feeding those starches to our pets because they break down into sugar and that triggers a lot of inflammation in the body. And
Mm.
so a lot of people are very familiar with pancreatitis, cystitis, gastroenteritis, gastritis, glomerulonephritis. There's all the itises. And so most of those itises are triggered from these starchy foods. And so that sugar is creating and fueling the fire or the flames of inflammation.
Wow. So the way that some foods can heighten or cause inflammation, I would think that there are foods that can do the opposite and that can work to help calm the immune system and or calm the inflammation or to eradicate it altogether. Is that true?
That is true. And I go into that in the course. We talk
Mhm.
about types of inflammation. We talk about doing more cooling foods to cool fire. There's also foods that move what we call damp or stagnation, which that can be connected to inflammation as well. And so there's a lot of things that we can do to support our pets when we know how to feed them.
What are your thoughts on bone broth?
Well, I personally love bone broth. In Chinese medicine, it's actually called bone marrow soup, and it's been used for thousands of years in that culture. And one of the damaging things that I saw a few years ago, back when keto diets were very new fad diet. Everybody was drinking bone broth. They were drinking bone broth 4 times a day, all year round. We were getting bone broth smoothie or protein powder, and people just really went overboard with the bone broth. And so, of course, here in America, we think if a little of something is good, a lot must be better, but that's not the case. And so bone broth actually has a season or a time of year when we're supposed to use it, because it acts as a medicine. That's what the Chinese food therapy is about. And it is actually meant to anchor yin and yang deep into the kidneys in the winter season. So we really only recommend bone broth from November to February. If we use it after that time, then we may prevent yang from exiting the body when it's wanting to come out for spring and summer. And that will actually make seizures. It can trigger seizures in a seizure dog, but it'll actually make allergies worse. It can have negative properties if it's fed out of season.
So knowing the seasons and the constitution for your pet, it is extremely important, because most people, they were thinking, well, again, like you said, I could just give my pet this because this is what I've been told, maybe even via AI. You've got these influencers out here and different things like that, and you got AI, and so they looked it up and they was like, oh, I can give bone broth. But if they don't really know the constitution of their pet, then they actually could be doing more damage than good, more harm than good. And so it's really important what I'm hearing you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I believe I'm hearing you say is that it's important to know where your pet is according to the different seasons, so that you can know what things to give them. It's called feeding made easy, because it's easy. You want it to be easy because it can be quite overwhelming. Even just, I'm just going to say for me as a human being, when I'm trying to eat right, I'm trying to fix my gut, I'm trying to do the healthy thing, I'm standing there and it's overwhelming because you're seeing all these things that are saying it's healthy. And so you don't know what to do. You don't necessarily know how to read the labels. What's this word mean? And I think that that's probably something you should stay away from. If you see a word you can't understand what it means, then that's probably a
That's the
food you should
truth.
stay you should
Yes.
stay away from. So in your course, you make it easy, right?
Yes. The goal is that a client will be able to identify their pet's constitution and
Yes.
then identify the foods that they want to feed based on their budget. And then through that, be able to evaluate the protein source that would be best for their pet.
And I want to thank you so much for doing this, because you are quite a busy woman. And to actually take time out to try to put down a lot of the information that you have all stored in your space there to help people out with their pets, because it has to be commended, because you don't want, as a veterinarian, your heart is to make the animal well. You want some prevention. You don't want to see all these animals all the time.
Absolutely. I think more than anything, what has upset me the most is seeing the people online that get the wrong information and then try a diet, whether it be raw or home cooked or a different kibble, and then their pet goes into a crisis, whether it's severe gastroenteritis or hemorrhagic gastroenteritis or pancreatitis. And then the vet that they see scares the living daylights out of them, and they never want to try another kibble again or another diet again. And they're stuck on the big name brand kibbles that are loaded in starches. And so sadly, their pet will stay in a sick cycle, and they don't even understand that it's because of that food, but they were given misinformation on how to transition to other foods. So I really have a heart and a passion for that. I don't want anyone to transition in a wrong way where their pet ends up worse than they were before, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because then when their pets, and thank you for that, when their pets are in a, I don't want to say sick, but when they're not doing well because of disease or whatever they may be dealing with, then that's the moment we start trying to find medications. We start trying to fill them up with things to make it better because we understand that all disease primarily, right, starts in the gut is what we know. And that's even true for pets, right? And so then people want to, oh, well, we got to fix the gut. So let's have some probiotics. What do you say about that?
Well, I definitely say that's not a great place to start, although it is very widely marketed online, as most people understand that the pet industry has become a multi-billion-dollar industry. And so we have a lot of companies that are making very low quality products and have huge marketing campaigns, and people are duped into buying them. Half of the time, they really don't have what they say is in a product. They may 90% of the probiotics may not even be viable, but we still don't want to just put probiotics on an inflamed gut because we are already having a bacterial and yeast issue with inflammation. And when we add more bacteria to that, it's not like the good bacteria just gets in there and goes to work. No, it has to have the scene set in advance. So there's actually a process that we have to do to get to that place of adding the probiotics. And so a lot of times people might go and get a gut formula with a lot of probiotics and they end up having more inflammation, more gut issues than they did before.
So some of the gut issues you said more bloating, things like that, are those kind of signs when there's digestive distress?
Absolutely. Bloating, gas, what I call is a scientific term, but borborygmus, which is where a person may hear their pet's tummy rumbling. Some people think it's cute, but it's not. It's a sign of distress in the gut. And so there are a lot of imbalances that go on within the gut. I talk a lot about different types of gut inflammation that is triggered from the routine care that most pets are receiving in this traditional time that we're in with veterinary care. And so, yes, they'll have a lot of tummy upset, a lot of rumbling, bloating. And to be honest, when I was an emergency critical care veterinarian,
Mhm.
I would say the second most common presentation that people would bring their pets in for in the middle of the night was gas.
Was
I
gas.
kept gas. We kept a Gas X formula stocked all the time. And when I would tell someone that they just paid an emergency visit and their pet was just having gas pains, like sometimes they would cry. They're up in the middle of the night. They have to get up and go to work the next day. They think their dog is dying, and their dog just is having a lot of gas pains, a lot of bloating, can't get comfortable. And not to dismiss a very serious condition, which
Sure.
is called bloat or gastric dilatation volvulus. That is very severe, but it does have some different presentation. But people would get up in the middle of the night and bring their pets in only to find out that that's what it was.
Oh my goodness. And a lot of that stems from possibly administering the probiotics when that's not what they need necessarily the first step.
Right.
I'm pretty sure people watching this will look at the bowl a little bit different now. Instead of just feed whatever, you'll pay attention and you'll put more effort into knowing the truth and knowing what to do so that you can hopefully eliminate some of the doctor's visits that you have to make because some of what your issue is may be happening just right there within the bowl. And so, and again, I always say that that goes for humans too, right? Because 9 times out of 10, people are feeding their pets what they're eating at the table. How many shows have we seen where the kid slides pizza off the table to the dog that's sitting right there? You know what I'm saying? Or they give them, they don't want their peas, their broccoli, or whatever it is. Are there things like sardines they really shouldn't have, even though it seems like a healthy or it's a raw food or whole food?
Well, actually, sardines are one of my favorites. We do recommend the sardines in spring water if they're going to do the sardines. But again, that would go back right to the terrain of the pet's gut. And so a dog that's on a very heavy, starchy kibble really cannot handle any fat fed from the table. It does not need meats with fat on it. That's where pancreatitis actually comes from. And so in the traditional side of veterinary medicine, they believe that fats trigger pancreatitis, but in fact, that is false. The pancreas does not like starches. It prefers to break down fats and proteins. That's the ancestral way of its design. But there are two cycles that the body uses to break down food. So if a pet is on a starchy food or a starchy kibble, it absolutely has to choose which cycle it's going to use. And it's already in the cycle of breaking down those sugars. So it's not going to break down the fats. And that pet will sadly, but inevitably develop pancreatitis. And just to give you an example, I have a patient that came to me for pancreatitis, and we have since corrected his diet. He was on, we transitioned him from kibble to home cooked, and then he went from home cooked to raw. And his parents have just said, oh my gosh, this dog loves this food so much. We've never seen him so excited to eat. And they left and went to someone's house for a little amount of time. And when they came back, he had eaten 14 ounces worth of bacon grease.
Oh.
Bacon grease. Now, back in the day, right, he'd been to the hospital many times for pancreatitis. That could nearly kill any dog. And it was just a miracle that I had them administer some Chinese herbs to him, and he threw up some of the fat, which was awesome. But after that, that dog did not have one bout of diarrhea.
Oh,
And that was
wow.
because his pancreas and his gallbladder were already positioned to break down fats and proteins, because he's had no starches in his diet whatsoever, probably at least 9 months, maybe a year now that he's just been on raw. And so his pancreas was ready to process that fat. That's the difference in how we feed each pet according to their constitution. And that's the difference it can make in a pet's health and well-being once they're established in that diet.
I'm listening to you, and I can't help but to think about, number one, that you know exactly what you're talking about. You had a lot of experience, you're not guessing.
No.
And that you have 9 cats.
Yes.
And now everything she's been sharing, this can be applied to both cats and dogs. And she has 7 dogs. These are all animals in your home. This is not just like they're just running around, but you have these animals in your home.
Yes, I do not have my farm yet, Lucretia.
You do not have your farm yet, and your animals are well.
My animals are beyond well. And it was interesting as we were talking and I was reflecting back on my emergency critical care days of dealing with the gas in the middle of the night with so many patients. I've told my clients and even some of the girls that work for me, my dogs never have gas. Some people think that that's part of having a pet. Oh, they're so stinky. We'll have people come in and be like, oh, my dog's just so stinky. He's always over there in the corner tooting it up while we have company. But our dogs don't have gas. And that's because I've really worked on their diet since I've had them. And throughout the time that I have them, it's the most important thing to me is their gut. And another thing that I can say about my pets in all of my years, even my older dogs, one Zuma, she made it to 17, and Poncho almost made it to 17. And of course, a couple of others that were 13 and 14. I've never had to do a dental on my own pets. And that's a really big deal. And that is something recently that I was thinking about, because dental disease is one of the most commonly searched issues online. It is by far the number one most marketed treatment online are for dental products, dental chews. Everything is geared towards teeth, because most of the people that are feeding their pets are feeding them either incorrectly based on their constitution or feeding them a high starch diet. And they have this imbalanced, or what we call dysbiosis, or imbalanced microbiome. And this affects the saliva, which actually stays up against the teeth. And so that allows the sugar and the plaque to form on those teeth. And when you feed correctly and you work on that gut, you don't have to worry about the teeth.
Now, I'm going to just go totally left field here because I want to just do that. I tend to do that to just keep you on your toes here. But I want to know, was there in all of your practice, not really necessarily your practice, but in your own life practice with your pets, was there ever a time where you were like, let me try this out on them? And then you were like, yeah, no. Was
Oh,
there ever a time?
years ago, when some of these raw feeding companies were becoming very popular, they would actually fund us veterinarians, holistic veterinarians, to feed our pets raw. And so I would get raw food for free. Who would not want that, right? Especially now in this age of inflation. That was over a decade ago. But in that, they would also send raw goat milk, and they instructed me to combine the goat milk within the raw food. Well, it was probably 2 months into me doing this where I started noticing all of my dogs losing their hair, just looking terrible. And I was like, the only thing different is not only am I feeding raw, but now I'm incorporating this raw goat milk into their food. And it took me a little while. Chinese medicine is based on observation. So I just continued to observe and observe. And then one day it was a realization that we need acidity in our stomach. We need that hydrochloric acid to begin the breakdown process of the raw meat, right? Because raw, it is the hardest food for the body to break down. So it begins in the stomach with hydrochloric acid, and then it moves through having the pancreas secrete its digestive enzymes, and then the gallbladder secretes the protease also. And so there's a 3-tier process here to breaking down that raw meat. And I'm giving an alkaline based substance that will actually prevent hydrochloric acid in the stomach. And so my pets were actually getting undigested protein dumped straight into the small intestine, and the small intestine was shocked over it, and I was creating a lot of inflammation. And so they were actually getting pretty severe leaky gut with inflammation, which was contributing to why they were all looking the way they did. After that, I removed the raw goat milk from their raw and separated it and gave it at a separate time, and I was able to resolve their issues. I had to do a little bit of gut healing formulas with them in the interim, but that's something I really teach a lot about too, that you don't want to just add raw goat milk to anything. You don't want to add it to cooked food. You don't want to add it to raw food. To kibble, it can be okay. That really, again, would come back to, it would depend. But that is a very important misconception that is still taught today. I've actually taught our pet stores in the area not to recommend that, even though some of the companies still recommend it. But in the worldwide, that is very common.
What are some symptoms of wrong feeding, or and how can people revert? And I know you probably go more in depth in your course, but what are some symptoms?
I would say the most obvious, as we talked about, right, would be the gut.
Mhm.
Are they having a lot of gas? Do they have intermittent bouts of diarrhea? They might be good for 3 weeks and then they have this blowout. Well, if it's not timed with when they get their oral flea and tick meds, which is, I talk about that deeper in my other course, a Holistic Pet Reset. But if it's not related to that, then oftentimes it's related to them being fed the wrong proteins. And what happens is the body actually builds up like a volcano with heat, and then it has an explosion. And so those are the biggest signs. But the first thing I do when a client brings their pet into my office is I'll look at the coat, because that coat is going to tell me a lot. It's going to tell me about their gut health. And then I'll always immediately go to what we call the saliva stains. Are they licking their paws? Are they licking their groin area? Where are they licking the front of their arms? Because there's actually acupuncture or meridians and or vascular lymphatic systems that run down the front of the arms that are connected to the gut and to digestion. And so if they're over grooming those, they're trying to do their own acupuncture. So that'll let me know. Large intestine off, is the small intestine off, is the triple heater inflamed or overheated? How does the gallbladder channel look? How does the liver channel look? So we're able to look at that pet and be able to determine, is their diet working for them based on those signs?
I can just imagine the people that are watching that are looking at their pet and seeing these symptoms or seeing some
Yes,
of the things that you're talking about and saying, wow, that's why my pet does that. Or that's why little Freddie does that. You're scooting on the ground with their bottom. These are all the ear itching. These are all different signs of things that need to be addressed. And a lot of it can be addressed with food and
absolutely.
how they feed. And so I have a couple more questions for you, and then I thank you for your time as well. Thank you for jumping on and taking a few of these questions because I think it's relevant. People want answers,
Yes.
and they want easy answers. They want to be able to resolve their issues easily and quickly. Of course, there's no miracle. You're not promising miracles, but if people would apply what the information that you are giving, then stick with it. In Chinese medicine, it's time, right? It's a process. With everything, there's a process. And I think you have a saying in your office about the process.
Well, one of the sayings is in consistency lies the power. So even if they make a few small changes and they're consistent with those changes, they're going to see improvement in their pet. But my number one saying is
Okay.
there is no shortcut to any place worth going. And so if we're going to go somewhere where we're really trying to have a transformation, as you had said earlier, we're trying to really make a difference here. We're trying to help heal the gut. We're trying to improve longevity. We're trying to age gracefully. That is a process. There is no shortcut to that, but it doesn't have to be an end all be all. It doesn't have to be difficult. There is a way to go about it. You can do it in baby steps. I really encourage that at my office. I tell people go at the pace that's comfortable for you in making these changes and adjustments. You don't have to do everything at once. You begin which is why we did this food course, is so they could begin somewhere small. And so you
Mm,
start with that diet, you begin with the gut. And then, as like my other course talks about, you learn how to detox and how the liver and the gallbladder are affected. And then, of course, we're going to go into even deeper stuff throughout the other seasons, how we support the heart and the small intestine and how we get,
yeah.
take care of the stomach and the pancreas. And so that actually is based on a yearly cycle and how we practice at my clinic. And so I really want to get that information out to everyone.
I love this. Don't despise small beginnings. Don't
Yes.
despise small beginnings. And Dr. Natalie is here to walk with you. And you don't have to get it all right and perfect. She's just saying you just have to get it. And you
Right.
get it by listening, by applying, by observing, and keep making those small steps. Keep making those small adjustments. And as you make those small adjustments, you'll see that things they'll begin to change and for the
Yes.
better. You love your pet. Your pet loves you for caring. A lot of people say about their pet being their child. And because your pet is your child, you wouldn't harm your child. You're going to give your child the best. You're going to give your child the food that it needs. And that's what you're saying. Do the same with because it's in the long run, it's for the longevity of that animal. One thing really quickly, can you just explain holistic medicine? Holistic, what is that?
So I would say holistic is looking at the body as a whole, where in traditional medicine, the body started being evaluated based on what we call the Newtonian theory.
Mhm.
And that was where they decided to break each element or organ system down like pieces of a clock. And
Mm.
so that's why people have a kidney doctor and a heart doctor and a gastroenterologist for their GI issues. But holistic means we're looking at the body as a whole and we're trying to get to the root cause of the issues so that we can correct them and we don't live in what we call the sick cycle or the symptom control cycle. So, where we're just covering up one symptom only to show up later as another symptom. So, we're really trying to get to the root of the issues and create balance and harmony.
Oh, wonderful. We want balance and we want harmony.
Yes.
Here's some fire questions real quick, and we're out of here. Who is this food energetics course designed for?
Well, I would say this food energetics course is designed for everyone. And when I was working on it, I was looking at a new pet parent with the puppy that they've just picked up, whether they've never had a puppy in their life or this is maybe their 10th puppy and they just want to do things differently because they've have seen a pattern of maybe early death or early disease. And so it would be for the young pet parent, the new puppy. And it's also for, of course, my specialty, which is geriatric medicine. That's who I deal with the most in my practice. It would help anyone whose dog might have developed cancer, kidney disease, liver disease, or just the aging pet. It's really for everyone.
All right, sounds amazing. And our last question is, what will pet parents understand differently after taking this course?
The goal of this course to me is that they will begin to see differently. And as we said, if they see differently, they can feed correctly. And as they begin to see differently and understand that food has an energy and that it has a therapy, that food can be medicine, that they will actually be able to bring more preventive or proactive care to their pet rather than reactive care. And my goal for that is that we help avoid emergency vet visits, that clients are able to get a hold of their pet's health. And as we have said before, or I say at my clinic all the time, each one reach one. And if this benefits one person, it could benefit another. And if you don't even realize that you would be able to save someone's pet from an emergency visit where they may have to make a decision based on finances of whether they could afford treatment or have to elect for euthanasia, because that is the type of time that we're living in. The cost of the medical care has just gotten so exponentially expensive that clients are having to make decisions that they never thought that they would have to make in certain situations. So this could help bring about help and prevent issues that may land someone in the emergency clinic.
Thank you so much, Dr. Natalie. If people want more information, where can they find this information? I think you have something in the comment.
Yes, they can find us both at my website at wellbeingpetcare.com, Instagram and Facebook at Wellbeing Vet. I'm starting my YouTube also at Wellbeing Vet. They can find us at Holistic Pet Reset.
Holistic Pet Reset is with a W. It starts with a
Yes.
W. So holisticpetreset.com. And that is where they directly can find the Feeding Made Easy food course along with other resources that you have. And this has just been amazing. You are amazing. You are such a gift. And so I want to thank you. And I'm sure that everyone watching this thanks you so much for your information, and they need to look out because you're going to be doing a lot more of these type of videos for them, just dropping them gems out there so that they can help to keep their dog well or their cat well.
Thank you, Lucretia.
You're welcome.